In December of 2020, Tatsuki Fujimoto published what was thought at the time to be the final chapter of his masterpiece, Chainsaw Man. But at the end, there was a little tidbit stating that this was only the end of part 1 in a story who knows how long. And after a well-deserved 570-day break, the beginning of Chainsaw Man Part 2, or Chapter 98, was published, which is also when I uploaded my first YouTube video. I actually started out as a Chainsaw Man dedicated channel, reviewing the newest chapter every single week, as well as new episodes of the anime. As you can imagine though, this was a lot of Chainsaw Man in my life, so much that I honestly started to get sick of the series. Instead of being hyped for the release of a new chapter, I dreaded it, because I knew it just meant I was gonna have to spend my Tuesday making a video I didn't wanna. So I decided to rebrand to the channel you see today, an anime variety channel. I'm a lot happier with my content now, and people also seem to enjoy it more, so it's a win-win. Though since then, there has been this looming shadow over me, just standing there in the corner, observing. No matter how much I tried to avoid it, I knew I would eventually have to deal with it. And in order to do that, I needed to go back to my roots. Go back and make a video on Chainsaw Man Part 2. Finally, I can talk about this series again. Believe it or not, I've never actually reread Part 2, meaning majority of these chapters I have not touched since they were published over a year ago. So going back through and re-experiencing it all again felt strange. I was constantly hit with waves of nostalgia as if it was something I read a decade ago, not just a year. I think that's because I remember the feeling of these chapters so vividly. I remember being at school and constantly checking the clock to see if time had inched ever so slightly closer to release. Then when 8 AM rolled around, I'd quickly but quietly open up the Shonen Jump app so the teacher wouldn't catch me on my phone. I remember feeling betrayed once I got through those 15 pages, immediately checking Twitter to see everybody else's reactions, ideas, and crackpot theories. And there were some crazy crackpot theories, like that Yuko was actually Denji in disguise, that Yoshida was the Death Devil. Chainsaw Man Part 2 has 100% been my favorite week-to-week read, and I honestly doubt that it will ever be topped. Though a lot of people complain about the cliffhangers that every single chapter leaves off on, and I can agree. Sometimes it feels more like Fujimoto just ended a chapter halfway through for some reason, so it can kind of feel cheap. That's why I think that a complete start-to-finish read-through is the best way to experience Chainsaw Man Part 2. Something that I was nervous about going into this is the possibility that I wouldn't enjoy Part 2 nearly as much as I used to. That me getting sick of making videos on it was actually just the realization that I didn't enjoy Chainsaw Man anymore. Though that fear immediately disappeared, because I was sucked back into Fujimoto's masterpiece from page 1. When it was over, I didn't feel like I had read 50 plus chapters of a manga. It felt more like I had just watched half of a very, very good movie. The entire story just flows together so well right from the beginning, as if Fujimoto had already drawn Part 2 out from start to finish. He's just kinda disassembling it and reassembling it in Jump Plus. I'm not saying that you should stop reading Chainsaw Man weekly and wait till it's finished. Keep reading it weekly, because I know I'll be. All I'm saying is that you should really take the time to re-experience it from beginning to end. I found a brand new appreciation for Part 2 because of it, and my perspective on pretty much everything about Chainsaw Man has changed, especially with our new protagonist, Asa Mitaka. Hey everyone, quick pause, I've got something special to share. If you're into unique fashion that speaks your language, then you'll want to hear about 21 Sailors. It's where anime meets streetwear in the most authentic way possible. They sent over a t-shirt from their latest collection, and honestly, it's been hard to wear anything else since. I've always been skeptical about anime themed clothes, but 21 Sailors has changed the game for me. The feel, the fit, the finish, it's clear they prioritize quality. What sets them apart even more is their commitment to real artistry. Every purchase from 21 Sailors directly supports the artist who bring these designs to life. No AI involved whatsoever. It's about genuine craftsmanship and supporting the community that creates it. If this sounds like your thing, don't sleep on it. These designs are limited edition. Once they're gone, they're gone. Click the link in the description to get 10% off your purchase. Thanks to 21 Sailors for supporting the channel. Now back to the video. When I first met Asa, I thought of her as the classic Sasuke archetype. That being the I hate everything and everyone because I have a really tragic backstory cliche. And that never really changed reading Part 2 week to week. Asa was all over the place in my opinion. One minute she would be head over heels for Denji, then in the next decide that she hated his guts. She would read out a whole Wikipedia article about starfish for no reason and get pissed when nobody wanted to listen. She was clumsy, annoying, unpredictable, and if I'm being completely honest, I never really liked Asa. Though in my reread, I genuinely tried to sit down and understand her actions. For starters, her anger at other people. Asa has not had the best life, as I mentioned before. That life has left her completely alone with no family, no friends, no one who cares for her, and in turn, no one that she cares for. Asa just kind of drifts from home to home, school to school, day to day with no real goal or purpose. But she desperately wants to have meaning in her life, to be able to make connections with other people, and to strive for happiness. But she just can't, since Asa falsely blames all of the bad things that have happened in her life on herself. Like when she and her mother were running from a devil, but Asa ended up tripping. In the end, Asa's mother sacrificed herself for her daughter. This moment in her life is always playing on repeat in the back of her head. It plays whenever she thinks about getting close to somebody, creating this constant dread that she'll somehow find a way to make a mistake, that she'll end up hurting everyone she cares about, and that she'll just end up alone again, sad and broken. So Asa lives her life as a jealous observer, watching everyone else live happy lives while she despises her own. In order to cope with that, she decides that everyone else is worthless, so therefore human connection is worthless. She's better off without it anyway. Yet whenever somebody does actually pay attention to her, she latches on almost immediately, staking her entire mental state on them. One such example was Yuko. At first Yuko scared Asa, because the two of them appear to be the exact opposites. Yuko just approached Asa and was immediately kind to her, acting purely altruistically. Asa can't understand why somebody would do this, why a person would risk getting close to another with the chance that it could end up badly. Asa pushes her away at first, but Yuko is relentless. So eventually Asa gives in, finally allowing a friend into her life, and for once, she can just have fun, hang out, and be a normal kid. Asa decides that she wants to live like Yuko does, by going out and doing things, not being worried about making mistakes, because even if she does, she knows her heart is in the right place. Though her happiness doesn't last long, as one day Yuko is absent from school because of an injury, so Asa goes to pay her a visit. The two chat it up, deciding that in order to be best friends, they have to tell each other some secrets. When it's Yuko's turn, she asks, "Promise you won't tell a soul?" Alright, promise," Asa replies. "I killed someone yesterday." "Huh? Oh yeah? Who?" "My neighbor." "Wow, why'd you do it?" "'Cause he'd go gamble at pachinko even though he is on welfare for disability." "What the heck?" "Yep." "What the heck?" I love Fujimoto's use of paneling here to show Asa's slow realization that Yuko isn't joking. Then the two just sit there in silence, one in disbelief, the other in pure bliss. Yuko reveals that she made a contract with the Justice Devil to help bring punishment to those who deserve it. "I'm gonna get rid of your bullying problem. Don't come to school tomorrow." Yuko has an extreme flaw in her logic. She didn't really become friends with Asa out of the kindness of her heart. Yuko was just as lonely as her, and she saw right through Asa's act of pretending to hate everything. So Yuko got closer to Asa, just to subsidize her own loneliness and to feel good about herself. Though as the two grew to care for each other, Yuko decided that it wasn't enough. She wants everyone to like her, just as Asa does. So she thought the best way to achieve this was to make a contract with a devil, then kill all of the bullies at her school. That way everyone will like her, and all of the bullies around the world will never be mean again out of fear. In the end, a lot of people die in the school attack, but Yuko gets away. Though at a cost. She is irreversibly damaged. No more devil than human. In the middle of the night, she stops by Asa's apartment to give one final goodbye, and an apology, expecting Asa to be mad at her. Though she isn't. Asa admits that Yuko was the first person that made her realize life is better when you have someone else that you care about. Better when you have a friend. Yuko promises to come back one day, once she can figure out how to be a human again and make everything right. Unfortunately, that's a promise she won't be able to keep. You would think that this would change Asa's life completely, and that she would now be a better person, but Fujimoto is never that simple, because life isn't that simple. Asa once again blames herself for Yuko's death, but instead of shutting everyone out, she decides that she needs to achieve her goal so that nobody else will get hurt. And that goal being to beat Chainsaw Man. Or I guess it's not really her goal per se, it belongs to the devil living in her head, Yoru. Yoru and Asa are more similar than the two of them would like to admit. In the Chainsaw Man world, a lot of major events such as World War II, the Holocaust, Vietnam, Korean Wars, Cold War, and nuclear weapons never happened due to Pochita erasing them from existence, meaning that the idea of war holds very little fear in modern human society. So Yoru being the war devil is not nearly as strong as she once was, making her the bottom rung out of all of her sisters, aka the Four Horsemen. While it's never been explicitly stated, here and there we have little hints that this has given Yoru an inferiority complex, possibly due to her sisters bullying her for being the weakest link. So she comes out of hell and back to Earth, coexisting in Asa's body, hoping to be able to kill Chainsaw Man and make him spit up nuclear weapons so the world can once again go to war. Though that's not happening anytime soon, since both Asa and Yoru are always at odds with one another. Asa overthinks and is in fear of making mistakes, never getting anything done, whereas Yoru just jumps headfirst with no prior planning or consideration for consequences. I don't think that this is necessarily because Yoru is immature. I think it's mainly because she has the fear that humanity will only continue to forget about war, slowly but surely withering away from the world as if she never existed. So Yoru has no time to think when she feels like there's a timer hanging over her head, counting down to her eventual death. Right now in the story, Asa and Yoru's relationship is tumultuous. They're both on the exact opposite sides in terms of their ideals, so they're obviously not going to get along. Though Asa's more now motivated to help Yoru achieve her goal, since as long as Yoru lives in her brain, Asa feels that she can't connect to anybody since they might end up dying due to Yoru. But to actually defeat Chainsaw Man, she has to get close to someone so she can turn them into a weapon. Asa needs somebody she feels society would be better off without, someone she wouldn't feel bad about killing. That person just happens to be Denji. I think that the simplest thing to do with Denji's character would have been that he magically learned from every single mistake in part 1, and was now the perfect person, living the perfect life. But again, Fujimoto isn't that simple because life isn't that simple. A reoccurring mystery in part 1 was what the door in Denji's dream signified. It wasn't until the end did we finally find out that that door was all of the horrible memories that he had locked away. Memories that were too painful for him to bear, so his way of coping was to pretend that they never happened. It's an extremely unhealthy habit that Denji has, one that Makima had taken advantage of, opening the door so she could manipulate Denji however she pleased. It seems that Denji has fallen back on his old ways, trying not to forget everything that happened in part 1 instead of processing it in a healthy way. He has returned to his old goal of trying to get a girlfriend because in the end, he's still a teenager. A teenager that thinks getting a girlfriend will solve all of his problems no matter who it is or how he goes about doing it. Though he now has what he feels like is his golden ticket, his new status as a superhero. In our time since part 1, Chainsaw Man has now become a famous devil fighting icon, an icon that has a sizable female fan base. So Denji devises a plan to somehow reveal his secret identity in a way that seems like a totally natural accident. I always just saw this as comedic reading part 2 week to week, but with a fresh pair of eyes, it feels more tragic. Makima broke Denji at the end of part 1 by revealing that she never really saw him as a person, she only cared for Chainsaw Man. So that's the mentality he brought into part 2, the mentality that people will never love him, Denji, only who he becomes when he pulls that ripcord. Being Chainsaw Man is Denji's way of escaping the lonely life that he lives, since he doesn't have time to be sad when he's fighting devils as the entire country cheers him on. But he wants people to love him, just as much as they love Chainsaw Man, so that's why he's trying to leak his identity so he can merge the two as one, so he can always be Chainsaw Man. But his plans always end up failing, usually due to his sheer stupidity. Though he seems to be doing something right to catch the eye of Asa Mitaka. Asa hates Denji's guts at first, so much so that she decides that he is worthless enough to be sacrificed for the greater good. In order to do that, she needs to get closer to him, to feel attachment or a significant amount of guilt when killing him. And the best way to do that is to nervously ask him out on a date, which he of course would jump at the chance. Denji and Asa's relationship is the most unpredictable in part 2, because every chapter you think, this is it, this is when they're gonna fall madly in love. Then something always gets in the way. The night before, Asa spends hours upon hours trying to craft the perfect date. She just plays this off as trying to make sure Denji falls for her, but in reality, it's because she's so scared of making a mistake. But as always, she just ends up overthinking things to her detriment. Since Asa came to the conclusion that the best possible way to have fun was to stand and stare at each exhibit for a certain amount of time, as she slowly but surely recites a Metal Gear codec call about starfish. Of course, this makes for an extremely boring date. Denji ends up getting mad that she won't let him do what he wants, putting them right back at square one, both hating each other. Things would have stayed like this had they not suddenly been trapped in the aquarium by the Infinity Devil. At first, Asa panics, not being able to think straight and fears she does try anything, she'll mess up. Denji, who has been in this situation more times than he can count, which is not a high number, calms her down. With a little self-esteem boost, Asa forms a plan. Despite being in the literal belly of the beast, the two have more fun than they ever have in their entire lives, running around the aquarium collecting money. Just like with Yuko, Asa can forget about all of her worries with Denji to just have fun, and for once Denji doesn't need to be Chainsaw Man to be happy when he's with Asa. After the two escape, Denji walks her home to her apartment. Yoru recognizes that Asa is falling in love with Denji, so she takes over his body, placing her hand on his head before shouting, "Denji, spinal cord sword." Luckily, it has no effect because Denji doesn't love her back. I think that this scene can be easily misinterpreted as Denji not caring for her, while in reality he does. He's just not head over heels like she is for him. I think that this shows us at least a glimpse of some emotional maturity in Denji actually, as in the past he would fall for any woman who looked his way. Now he knows that it's best to slowly kindle a relationship instead of just diving head first. Asa doesn't see things this way. She falls back on her old cycle, immediately overthinking things. She convinces herself that Denji never liked her at all and was just pretending to for some reason. That all of the nice things she said about her and the fun that they had was just a lie. She decides that she hates Denji, that she would be better off if she just pushed him away like she does with everyone else. Their second date goes horribly because Asa is just mean to him the entire time, making up stuff like saying that she only went out with him as a distraction. This part was genuinely hard to read because Denji thought he finally found the person who liked him, not just Chainsaw Man. This feeds his insecurities as Denji starts to blame himself, that maybe he made a mistake, that maybe she was only using him, just like every other woman in his life had. The two just sit there in awkward silence, both ruining any chance they have together, but Yoru doesn't allow it. She strikes at Denji by taking over Asa's body and kissing him, but right before she can turn him into a weapon, Nayuda busts down the door. Nayuda is a problem child, as Denji puts it best. She's extremely loud, immature, and abrasive, everything Denji is, so no wonder the two get along so well. Denji's been raising her ever since she was born, working his butt off to try and give her a normal life, a life free of the things that Denji went through. She recognizes that and loves him for it, the only person that does. But Nayuda also represents a crossroads for Denji. On one hand, he wants to be able to play superhero by going out and being Chainsaw Man, but on the other, he wants to live a normal teenage life with a normal family. As Baron puts it best later down the line, picture weighing the following on a pair of scales. On the right side, place friends, family, a peaceful, wonderful everyday life, your cats and dogs. And on the left side, just one thing, the starter that transforms you into Chainsaw Man. Which side is heavier? He wants to choose both so badly, but he just can't. The world won't let him. He staked too much of his self-worth on being Chainsaw Man and his goal of Nayuda living a normal life. I think that this moral dilemma is one that Denji is going to have to suffer through, but hopefully this time not on his own. Maybe with some people that actually care for him to help him decide. But right now the people swaying his opinion are not the right people. For a really long time now, we've been hearing about this so-called Nostradamus prophecy that is said to predict the end of the world in 1999. Two major organizations seem to want to put an end to it, but can't agree on how. One of the plans includes Denji at the center, and the other, Chainsaw Man. The first major player being Yoshida and Public Safety. Back in part 1, Yoshida was the guy. He just showed up out of nowhere halfway through, went toe-to-toe with the strongest human in the world, and just dipped without a word. Then he suddenly resurfaces in the second chapter of part 2, acting like nothing had happened. He seems to be the representative for Public Safety now. What do you think the government would have disbanded after the leader of the branch ended up murdering literally thousands of people? So they have to have some pretty good leadership for them to remain afloat. My bets are on it being Kishibe, but who knows, since for now, we have Yoshida. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people theorized him to be the Death Devil in disguise, and I can honestly see why. Yoshida has this strange lifelessness to him, always having a slight smirk on his face and never showing any emotion at all, even in the heat of battle. Though that persona broke down when he was trapped in the aquarium with Denji and Asa, I think that he was being genuine when he said that he thought he was going to die in there. This moment revealed that he is a lot more human than I initially thought him to be. So I'm curious about his reasoning for joining public safety, especially with what they're having him do. That being to convince Senshi to stop being Chainsaw Man and live a normal life. Public safety is extremely adamant on this for reasons not quite clear yet, but they're willing to go to extreme lengths to keep him at bay, even threatening to kill Nayuta. Then there is the second major player, Fami in the Chainsaw Man Church. For the longest time, I assumed Fami was the one who had set the Nostradamus prophecy into motion, but it turns out she wants to stop it for the sole reason that it would destroy the humans who make delicious human food. She describes a world without pizza as the worst scenario imaginable, so she plans on making Chainsaw Man powerful enough to combat that. In order to achieve her goal, she employs the help of Barum. While we haven't seen much of this guy, I already love him. He just always shows up at the worst possible moments, not really doing anything but just standing there, saying the most cryptic stuff with a smile. A face that lets you know he doesn't just make threats, he makes promises. I don't really want to say too much about him because there's always a chance he just gets off in the next chapter, but he genuinely could have the chance to be my favorite Chainsaw Man villain if he sticks around. Right now, he is the thing that is pushing Denji the most to be Chainsaw Man, constantly referring to Denji as a separate entity. What he seems to be doing is trying to erase all the things that Denji cares about so that he will be forgotten, forcing him to permanently become Chainsaw Man just like Makima did. What will Denji choose? I can't wait to find out. Part 2 is escalating very quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if it only lasts for another year and a half. As sad as it may seem, this is very likely going to be the end of Chainsaw Man as a whole, as everything they thought the series would save for later parts seems to be making an appearance. I can't wait to see what Fujimoto has in store for us going forward. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.